Dr. Kayla Vorn had seen her share of unusual patients during her 3 years stationed at Garrison Outpost, Theta 7. She'd treated crystalline Vexians whose biology defied every principle of organic chemistry, patched up methane-breathing Chromath soldiers, and once spent 16 hours reattaching the segmented limbs of a Quillan engineer. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for the moment two terrified supply runners burst through the infirmary doors carrying a wounded alpha cub. The galaxy knew the alphas. Everyone knew the alphas. They were the apex predators of the outer reaches, 8-foot-tall bipedal carnivores whose species had never been conquered, never been subdued, and never, ever allowed outsiders near their young. Their cubs were sacred, protected by tribal laws so ancient that most xenoanthropologists believed they predated spaceflight itself, and now one was bleeding on her examination table. Contact was accidental, one of the supply runners stammered, his translator struggling to keep pace with his panicked clicks and whistles. Cargo hauler crashed in the border zone. We found her in the wreckage. Didn't know what else to do. Kayla's hands moved on autopilot, scanning the cub's vital signs while her mind raced through the implications. Rinner, the nameplate on the cub's torn flight suit read Rinner, couldn't have been more than 6 standard years old. Her russet fur was matted with blood, and a deep gash ran along her shoulder where debris had torn through muscle and tissue. But what struck Kayla most were the cub's eyes, amber, intelligent, and filled with a pain that transcended the physical. Out, Kayla ordered. Both of you, now. She worked through the night. Alpha physiology was classified, their medical data locked behind walls of tradition and secrecy. But Kayla was human, and humans had built their reputation in the galactic medical community on one particular talent: improvisation. She extrapolated from known carnivore biology, adjusted for the cub's triple-chambered cardiovascular system, and synthesized a coagulant that her scanner suggested might work. It did. By dawn, Rinner's breathing had steadied. The wound was closed, sealed with a synthetic mesh that would dissolve as new tissue grew. Kayla slumped in her chair, exhaustion finally claiming her, and allowed herself one moment of relief. That's when she heard the howl. It started low, a subsonic rumble that made the infirmary windows vibrate. Then it rose, a haunting call that spoke of loss and fury and desperation. Kayla rushed to the window and felt her blood freeze. The garrison's perimeter was surrounded by alphas. Dozens of them stood in the pre-dawn darkness, their silhouettes massive against the pale sky. More arrived as she watched, emerging from the forest like shadows given form. They didn't attack. They didn't advance. They simply waited, their collective presence a promise and a threat. Commander Earlax appeared at the infirmary door within minutes, his exoskeleton armor humming with nervous energy. "Dr. Vorn, we need to discuss evacuation procedures." "She's not stable enough to move," Kayla said flatly. "Then we'll sedate her and touch her, and they'll tear this garrison apart." Kayla surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. "She stays, I stay. Everyone else can do whatever they think is smart." The commander's mandibles clicked in distress, but he left without another word. The siege began. It wasn't a siege in the traditional sense. The alphas made no demands because they didn't need to. Their message was clear. The cub would be returned unharmed or there would be consequences. The garrison's defensive systems tracked over 200 individual heat signatures by midday. By evening, that number had tripled. Kayla maintained her vigil. She changed Rinnar's dressings, monitored her fluid intake, and spoke to her in soft tones even though the cub remained unconscious. It was during one of these one-sided conversations that she noticed the patterns. Every few hours, one alpha would separate from the pack and approach the garrison's outer wall. They would pause at exactly the same spot, tilt their heads as if listening, then retreat. It took Kayla embarrassingly long to realize they were tracking Rinnar's heartbeat through the structure itself. On the third day, Kayla made a decision that would either save the garrison or doom it. She opened the infirmary's external blast door. The garrison's communication channels exploded with panicked chatter, but Kayla ignored them all. She stood in the doorway, arms raised to show she was unarmed, and waited. An alpha separated from the pack, larger than the others, with silver threading through the dark fur around her muzzle. The matriarch approached slowly, each step measured and deliberate. They stood 5 feet apart, human and alpha, separated by species and culture and 1,000 unspoken laws. Then Kayla did something no human had ever done in recorded history. She stepped aside and gestured toward the infirmary. The matriarch's eyes widened fractionally. Then, moving with surprising gentleness for a creature of her size, she entered. What happened in that infirmary over the next hour, no one else witnessed. But when the matriarch emerged, she carried Rinnar in her arms. The cub's eyes were open now, one small hand clutching her mother's fur. As they passed Kayla, Rinnar reached out and touched the doctor's hand just for a moment. The matriarch paused. She looked at Kayla, and something passed between them that transcended language. Then she threw back her head and released a call that echoed across the valley. The siege lifted within minutes. The Alphas melted back into the forest as quickly as they'd appeared. By sunset, the garrison's perimeter sensors showed nothing but empty wilderness. But every